The next complements and sentence patterns are going to focus on linking verbs. The reason that we had you memorize your linking verbs for a quiz that you're actually taking today is so that they're a lot easier for you to recognize within the context of a sentence. We also have some that can be used as helping verbs. We're going to focus on them as linking verbs now, and once we're pretty good at identifying them, then we're going to talk about how they're also used as helping verbs. But linking verbs, just like their name, their job is to link the subject of the sentence to a word in the predicate. So if I look at our example sentence down here, King Kong is a huge gorilla with black fur. Whether it's an action or a linking verb, we're always going to follow the same routine to get rid of extra information. So I look in here and I see a preposition from our list, with. I want to look at with what to find my prepositional phrase, with black fur. And now I can get rid of that part of the sentence and I'm left with something a little bit less complicated to work with. King Kong is a huge gorilla. I look for my subject. Who is it about? King Kong. And for right now, let's just identify the word up here, one of our linking verbs that's in the sentence, and it's is. King Kong is. Technically, that's really all you need to have a complete sentence, a subject and a verb. He seems angry at the humans. I'm going to look to see if I can find a preposition, and I do. At. At what? At the humans. I'm left with a smaller sentence. He seems angry. He is the subject. What does he, I'm sorry, I could say what does he do, but I know I'm not working with action verbs. So if I don't see an action verb, then I want to look for a verb that's on the list of linking verbs that we had to memorize. And seem is that S in grab. Seems is the linking verb. He smells bad like dirty socks. Look for my preposition. Like what? Like dirty socks. Look for my subject. Who is the sentence about? It's about he. Look for my verb smells and decide, is it an action verb? Is it talking about him doing the action of smelling? Or is it on our list of linking verbs? And there it is, smell. It's a linking verb. And then the last one, he smelled the bait on the ship. Look first for my prepositional phrase, and I found on the ship. And I see he smelled the bait, so I look for my subject. It's he again. And I see the verb smelled. He smelled the bait. I want to stop and think, is smelled used as an action or a linking verb? The difference between an action and a linking verb. If it's him doing the action of smelling something, he used his nose and he sniffed and he did the action to smell the bait, that's an action. Here, the way it's being used, it's describing how he smells. We're going to talk about what these complements are going to be. But there is a difference, and so just because we memorize them as linking verbs here does not mean that they can't be used as action verbs. That's where we have to really get into the structure of the sentence. So the first complement we're going to look at is the predicate adjective. We're looking for an adjective that comes after a linking verb. And it also has to go back and link back to the subject and describe it. A lot of times we could have an adjective that follows the linking verb, but if it's not describing the subject, then it's not a predicate adjective. So my example, butterflies are fragile. Can tell very quickly, no prepositional phrases here. So what's my subject? It's butterflies. Am is are, was, were. There's my linking verb are. And I'm looking for a word that describes the butterflies or renames it. Fragile describes what it looks like, how careful you have to be when handling butterflies because they are fragile. It goes back and describes the subject. Butterflies are fragile. The next one, monarchs look beautiful. No prepositional phrase there. Monarchs is the subject. Look is the verb, and I want to decide, is it an action or a linking verb? Is the monarch taking its eyes and actually looking around? Or is it going to be describing how it looks? Which is the case. It looks how? It looks beautiful. I've got an adjective following a linking verb that goes back and describes how the monarchs look. The monarchs look beautiful. They appear small to the human eye. I do see a preposition in here, to, but I have to stop and think for a second. To could also be used as an infinitive, so I want to look at the word after the to see if it's a verb. The, you can't the, so this is a prepositional phrase. To what? To the human eye. Now by getting rid of that, I have a much smaller sentence. They appear small. The subject is they. Appear is a verb. I want to think, is it an action or is it used as a linking? The action of magically appearing before me. They appear small. Doesn't sound like it's going to magically just appear in front of us. It sounds like it's describing how do they look. So that's a predicate adjective. They appear small. Goes back and describes the subject. Predicate nouns are very similar complements, but instead of describing the subject, we're going to rename it. We're going to look for a noun instead of an adjective. Noun that follows a linking verb, and it renames the subject. So we go through the same process. We look to see if there are any prepositional phrases. Monarch butterflies are insects. I don't see any prepositions, so I'm going to go to my subject. We're looking for the one word that tells what the sentence is about. In this case, it's not monarch, it's butterflies is the noun. Monarchs is actually a modifier. Tells what kind of butterfly? Monarch butterflies. I see are right away. I memorized that for my linking verbs test. I know that's a linking verb. Monarchs or butterflies are. Now I don't see a word that describes the butterflies, but I see a word that tells me what the butterflies are, another noun. They are insects. It goes back and renames the subject. I could switch them around. Insects are butterflies. Okay. Cocoons become butterfly nurseries. I don't see any prepositional phrases in there, so I'm going to look for my subject. What's it about? It's about a cocoon. I'm going to look for my linking verb, and I remember from my linking verb list, become, grow, remain, appear, become. It's a linking verb. And what do the cocoons become? Cocoons become butterfly. That's not going to make sense because this one's singular and this one's plural. Cocoons become nurseries. A nursery is where baby plants are grown or little children are taken to for like daycare. So that makes sense. Cocoons become nurseries for butterflies. It's when butterflies are babies. So I've got a noun that renames what those cocoons are. It actually sounds like a metaphor too. It's a figurative way of describing what a cocoon does. Now I do see I've got butterfly left here. Let's think about what butterfly is doing in the sentence. It's an adjective the way it's being used. It's describing the nursery. What kind of nursery? It's not a plant nursery or a baby nursery. It's a butterfly nursery. So here's my adjective. Now we had talked in the last slide about adjectives that follow a linking verb. And we can see this cannot be a predicate adjective because if it was, it would go back and describe the cocoons, and it does not do that. It describes the nurseries. The last one. Arctic terns are marathoners of the bird world. Look for a prepositional phrase. I see of. Of what? Of the bird world. Look for my subject. What's the sentence about? Not about an Arctic. It's about a tern. And a tern, in case you didn't know it, it's a type of bird. And I can tell by my modifier here where it lives. If it's Arctic, okay, it lives in the Arctic. Arctic terns. Are is my linking verb. I remember that for my test right away. Arctic terns are. I'm either describing the subject or telling me what those terns are. Marathoners. This sounds like another metaphor. Marathoner is somebody who runs a long distance. So I think the way that they're describing these terns is that they can fly great distances. Of all the birds that exist in the world, Arctic terns are the ones that can fly the greatest distance. So they compared them to a marathoner, which is a noun, and it renames the Arctic terns. So we are going to continue to practice identifying the sentences, starting with this process of getting rid of the extras, finding the subject, finding the verb, deciding what kind of verb it is, and then identifying the complement that falls after it. If you finish this and you would like to try, I would advise you did it in pencil. Use a highlighter to find your prepositional phrases, and then use your pencil to label the sentence patterns so that as we go back, we can change them if need be. But hold on, give me a second. In the next page of your interactive notebook, we glued this sentence patterns review using famous quotes. So you could take the time right now if you want to practice. Again, get your prepositional or get your highlighter out to highlight, but you're really focusing just on finding the subject, this verb, and the complement. But I would do that in pencil because as we go through this and get more familiar with them, I don't expect you to get them all perfect right now. We want it to be able to be something that you can fix.